The film begins with Bud Jablonski, a pool cleaner with the strange side profession of being a vampire hunter, at a house where he allegedly gets hired to clean the pool. There he kills an older woman and a young vampire, and harvests their teeth because they are highly valuable. Scene shifts to Audrey San Fernando, who is also shown to be a vampire, and claims to have huge plans for the Los Angeles area and its vampire population. At the same time, she is torturing a lower-level criminal vampire named Sasha. The camera cuts to a sign outside a construction site, exposing her to be a wealthy and powerful real estate entrepreneur. When Bud returns to his flat, it becomes clear that he is having money problems because his rent is late. He takes a shower and picks up his daughter Paige. Although he was legally wed to her mother Jocelyn, they do live separately from one another. After that, Bud brings Paige late to her home after taking her to a frozen yogurt shop. Later at Jocelyn's house, she says that she's taking Paige to her mother's house in Florida. Bud, heartbroken at the risk of losing his daughter, begs her to give him till Monday. He expects to make roughly $10,000 from the sale of his freshly acquired vampire teeth, which will be sufficient to cover Paige's braces and other extra expenses. Jocelyn is suspicious that he would keep his word because his lies in the past caused her and Bud to split up, but she gives him a chance. Later, Bud visits Troy, a dodgy pawn shop owner. Troy only offers him a portion of that. Bud knows he can earn more money for those teeth at the vampire hunting organization known as the Union, where it is revealed that Bud was banished from the Union. Bud texts his old friend Big John Elliott in the hopes that he can get him in, because he needs the money by Monday. Scene shift to Audrey. She warns her business partner that if he backs out of their agreement, he might suffer the same fate as Sasha. She also reveals the availability of a product that enables vampires to move around in the daytime. She goes to the place where Bud murdered the two vampires with her henchman Klaus. It is revealed that the elderly woman held a special place in her heart, and she makes a promise to exact revenge on whoever killed her. Following that, Big John and Bud meet outside the Union. When they meet with Ralph Seeger, the curmudgeonly director who refuses to let Bud back in because of his multiple prior code infractions. After much persuasion, Seeger agrees to let Bud work the day shift, which is considered unworthy to the far more profitable night shift. Later, to receive money for Bud's teeth, Bud and Big John go downstairs to the banking department. Cashier Seth initially pays him a big fee, but after withholding repeated fees, he lowers it to a tiny percentage. After that, Seth is told by Seeger to team up with Bud and report any code breaches he does, in order to be promoted to his supervisor Carol's position. Seth hesitantly concurs. Seth displays a high level of theoretical understanding of vampires, making Bud noticeably astonished, but he keeps it to himself. Meanwhile, Audrey pays a visit to Troy in order to scare him and ends up killing him. Later on their initial mission as a team, Bud advises Seth to wait in the car, but Seth receives a call from Seeger telling him to enter and check for any code violations. Once he got inside, he was terrified by the vampire bloodbath. Seth vomits and wets himself outside the car. Bud, who has grown feelings for Seth, drives him home. Bud meets and greets Heather, a new neighbor in his building who claims to be a nurse after arriving home. The following day, Bud discovers that Seth has been writing him up for a number of code infractions. They enter Troy's pawn store and discover him dead on the desk, with all of his teeth removed. Bud then explains that he needs the money to support his family, so he needs to break some code. Seth swears he will not report to Seeger. Bud and Seth encounter the Nazarian brothers, renowned hunters who act as audio repairmen, on their subsequent assignment. Together, they destroy a vampire nest, and the mysterious item from earlier is revealed to be a vampire sunscreen, enabling them to spend 15 to 20 minutes outside in the sun. Seth notes that the nest contains multiple diverse species of vampires who would never choose to live together. Bud admits that he has a valid point, but he has to rush to pick up Paige from school. While picking up, Bud feels uncomfortable and asks Paige if she wants to stay in once they get home. Jocelyn reminds him that she's been looking forward to a birthday celebration for a week and that he had to take her. He reluctantly agrees. At a party, Audrey calls Bud and threatens to kidnap both his wife and daughter. He gets Paige in the car as soon as possible and is immediately pursued by Audrey's goons. As Paige plays with her iPad in the backseat, he slices one of their necks in the parking lot and engages in a thrilling car chase. When Bud returns Paige to Jocelyn, he is attacked by Audrey and her thugs. At that point, Bud tells his wife and daughter about his secret and that he is a vampire hunter. Following that, Bud is knocked unconscious, and when he awakens, he discovers that Seth was bitten and transformed into a vampire. Seth jumps at Bud, who then chops off his head. Because he is unable to control his hunger, Seth's health is still unstable because he was transformed by an extreme vampire. Hence, cutting off his head does not lead to his death. As Bud makes his way back to his apartment building, he seeks for Heather because she is the one person in whom he has confided. It turns out that Audrey also transformed Heather into a vampire, and Bud and Heather have a brief argument. Heather then explains that the elderly vampire Bud slaughtered is actually Audrey's daughter, who wasn't converted until after she grew old in human years. Audrey and Klaus transport Jocelyn and Paige to a temple lair underground. Meanwhile, Heather says that Audrey intends to flood the valley with vampires and aid them by purchasing property throughout the area. Later, Bud, Seth, and Heather travel to a deserted mall and quickly eliminate some of Audrey's thugs. When they are surrounded, Big John shows up and uses his tiny rifle to dispatch dozens of them. When Bud and John enter the underground compound, they see vampires at work in a factory that makes vampire sunscreen. They eliminate them. Audrey is made aware of Bud's presence by Klaus, who can smell him. Bud and John are ambushed by a group of vampires as they venture farther into the basement lair, and John is bitten. He encourages Bud to go ahead and find his wife and child before closing the gate behind him. As soon as Bud is out of sight, John shoots the approaching vampires with his gun's clip and sets off an explosive device around his hips to kill them all. Bud approaches Klaus, but Heather and Seth smash through the roof and tell him to go ahead and find Paige and Jocelyn. They begin to fight with Klaus, but he easily wins over them. Bud encounters Paige and Jocelyn with Audrey and loses the battle. Just as she prepares to release the killer bite, Paige uses a wooden stake to stab her in the heart from behind, but Audrey doesn't seem to care and she cuts it off. She throws Bud and Jocelyn across the room. Klaus holds Seth and Heather in a choke grip, but they work together to free them by ripping Klaus's arms off. Audrey was still carrying the wooden stake in her heart. At the same time, Bud attempts to kill her by firing his final silver bullet at her neck, though she manages to capture the bullet between her teeth. Bud closes his eyes, looking at peace with his unexpected death, as she rushes to finish him off. A chopping sound indicates that Audrey has stepped into his wire trap and been beheaded. Audrey is destroyed as Bud is mocked one final time by her chopped head. Following the last battle, everyone returns upstairs, where they encounter a terrified Seeger. As he begins to use union regulations in an attempt to permanently remove Bud, Seth defends him by rejecting all of his charges. An enraged Seeger informs Seth that he will not be promoted to Carol's job, but Seth informs him that he is now a field guy and will continue to battle vampires alongside Bud. Later, Bud approaches Jocelyn and asks if he can return to the house with her and Paige. However, she will only agree to proceed slowly if Bud gives her honest responses and stops lying. She gives Bud a cheek kiss. Following that, the sky is visible as the camera moves up. It is revealed that Big John is still alive and is rising from a manhole. Finally, the film faded to a dark screen,